Jimmy, you completed Mission Impossible. You got Ethan Hunt out of your tank. Now it's safe to put in more fish, but before we get there, how are you feeling?
That was a bit of a journey to make that happen, but he is living safely in my sump right now till I find a home for him, and I'm feeling really good, except for I gotta tell you, this hobby has really become an obsession. I can't wait to see what I'm gonna do next. And now that Ethan's not in there, I can add some new residents and replace some that you know, Ethan kind of took care of. Some of my little blue-legged crabs and some of my cleanup crew.
So the thing that we're gonna do right now is tear down your tank and be done with it.
That's fine, because I have about a foot of space over there and a foot of space over there. I think I can get a bigger one.
I love it. Look, you only get to this point of thinking about a bigger tank if you've had success, and the point of the series is to show what it's like to start a saltwater tank, maintain one, and sometimes it's really good, and sometimes, like with dealing with an aggressive fish with Ethan, you hit a bump on the road, but you went through it. What I want to talk to you about today is something that a lot of people overlook, Jimmy: cleanup crew fish.
Oh, I have cleanup crew fish in my freshwater aquarium. I've got this fish called a Pacostomus, I think it is. Those things are huge, and they're like, you know, always sucking on the glass. They do a pretty good job.
So some fish do like your pleco in your other tank. They eat algae, and the big one that comes to mind there is tangs, because they clean up algae, they eat algae, but some types of tangs work harder than others, specifically bristle-toothed tangs. These guys always picking at rocks, even when the other ones are not interested in picking off stuff on the rocks. I found my bristle-tooths are always working the rocks. I mean, if you own a company, you would want these fish working for you, because they're always in there doing their job. They rarely get distracted. Specifically, a white-tailed bristle-tooth and a Timini tang are the two big cleanup crew, hard-working bristle-tooth tangs that I would love to see in your tank.
That would be awesome, and they're pretty cool looking too. So they were on my list.
So the other type of fish that a lot of people overlook is a blue-green chromos. Now there's a disclaimer on these, I'm gonna get to that in a minute, but I consider them cleanup crew fish because they keep stuff from ever turning into algae in a way, because they're always picking little things out of the water column. Like, you know when you feed your tank and the big stuff in the food gets eaten and then there's all these little particles floating around? Like, your tanks aren't gonna bother with that stuff, but the blue-green chromos will run around and they'll nip it, boom, 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 boom. They go, like they're little firecrackers, like bang, 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 getting stuff all out of the water column. So they're good for that, of cleaning up food before it has a chance to break down in your tank, potentially cause algae problems.
Now wait, Mark, you said there's a disclaimer. So what's the disclaimer with the chromos?
Here's the thing about the chromos. They look really cool in schools. You and I have seen them in schools out in the ocean, in the Great Barrier Reef. They hang out on these corals and you get close to them and then they dive down in there. However, I've never been able to successfully replicate that in a saltwater tank. You'll buy 3, 5, 6, maybe 10 of them, put them in your tank, you always end up with one. They always seem to pick off the shrimpy guy, the runt, and then the next one, lowest in the totem pole, boom, they go after him, and all of a sudden you're left with one of them. So a lot of people like to start with a lot of them, in the end you're gonna end up with one. So, while I have never found what works, you're not gonna know until you try, so let's go with 3 for your tank, 3 of them, and let's see what we get. Maybe Jimmy has a magic, Jimmy Disney here has a magic to keep more than one successfully long-term in his tank.
I think you just have to talk nice to them. And you have to let them know who's the boss.
So how did that work out with Ethan, Jimmy?
Oh, you know, you think I would be better at this because I raised kids. I've always had pets.
And you worked customer service at Disney.
Oh yeah, customer service at Disney. So I have a skill set, but that fish, ooh, yeah, maybe talking nice doesn't really work either. But in his case, I think I got a little angry at him.
Another part of keeping your tank clean is your sand bed. Some people like sparkling white sand beds, and I found that a lot of times like that's unachievable short of always stirring up your sand bed, but you can still keep it very clean. One way to do that and let the fish do the work for you is to get fish, specifically gobies, that sift through the sand bed. Now, another disclaimer here, we'll talk about that. Well, let's talk about that right now. One of the most favorite types of sifting gobies is a sleeper head goby. People love them. They're like, oh yeah, you want to sift your sand? Just get a sleeper head goby. Here's the thing about those guys. They look great, they work all the time. They're also like ADD fish. They won't calm down. They will sometimes bury coral that are sitting on your sand bed. They will sometimes move your sand bed from one end of your tank to the other end of the tank multiple times a day. This happened to a client of mine, same size tank as yours, Jimmy. Once a day, all the sand would go over there, and the next it would go over there because the fish were moving around. So those sleeper heads, they're too active for me. What I like to do is use either a pink spot goby or a diamond goby. Now let's rate these. Pink spot is going to be the least likely to bury coral, but they're also going to be most likely to not get around your sand bed. I found they kind of set up a little house like cheese, and they'll kind of keep their front yard clean, and the rest of the tank, they're like, whatever, that's my neighbor's problem. I'm not dealing with it. But there's very little risk of them burying the coral. If they do bury the coral right in front of their house, just move the coral. Now the diamond gobies, they're less likely to go as nuts as the sleepers, but they still could do it. So you're gonna have to decide where you fall in this spectrum, Jimmy. I think with you, and especially with your fish catching abilities, I would love to see you go the diamond goby route. Let's see what we get and see how it plays out in your tank.
Yeah, diamond goby sounds great.
Okay, last cleanup crew fish that I would love to see in your tank, Jimmy, is a rabbit fish or a fox face fish. They're both rabbits, but they're called fox faces. There's a fox face low, which is kind of the more common fox face, and then there's a magnificent fox face as well as some gold barred rabbits. Both of those fish, hard workers, they're gonna eat algae. Some people say they eat Boropsis. I've never had that experience. Some people say they eat bubble algae. I haven't had that experience either, but they're cool looking fish. They're really colorful. They're gonna work hard in your tank cleaning things up. So either one of those, maybe even two for your tank, you could go with the rabbit and you could go with the fox face, are gonna work great for you.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I love the rabbit fish.
All right, Jimmy, so we've got some cleanup crew fish lined up for you. We talked a couple weeks ago about fish on the fringe for you. We're gonna space these out so we don't overfill your quarantine, but let's go order you up some fish and get you back in this fish game.
Yes, awesome.